When Grandpa first started groaning every time he stood up, I brushed it off. He's just getting older, I told myself. But then I started noticing the small things. The way he winced when lifting a simple cup of tea. How he avoided the stairs like each step carried a secret weight. The way he'd quietly rub his knees at night before bed, thinking I wasn't looking. "It's just a bit of stiffness," he'd say, with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. But I knew it wasn't just stiffness. It was inflammation, slow, stubborn, and invisible. It didn't scream. It didn't show itself loudly. But every single day it stole something small, a bit of comfort, a bit of ease, a bit of life. And as I watched him shrink into his routines, move less, laugh quieter, I realized, if I didn't do something, that little pain might become his constant companion, and I couldn't let that happen. The first thing I changed in Grandpa's meals wasn't big. It was just a piece of salmon, not fried, not covered in seasoning, just gently grilled or steamed with a bit of lemon on top. I didn't say much. I just placed it on his plate and watched. Salmon is full of omega-3 fatty acids, the kind that quietly go to work inside the body, soothing inflammation, especially in joints that have carried years of living. For a while, nothing seemed different, but then I noticed. He wasn't rubbing his knees after dinner anymore. He stood up with less hesitation. He walked a little smoother. And one afternoon, as we sat outside watching the trees sway, he smiled and said, "My legs feel lighter today." And that shift, so small, so gentle, didn't come from medicine. It started with a single piece of fish, and someone who cared enough to put it there. In Grandma's kitchen, turmeric was everywhere, quiet, humble, golden. Folded into soups, tucked into rice, swirled gently into warm milk before bed. As a child, I thought it was just for color, a warm glow on the edge of every dish. But now I understand. Turmeric carries curcumin, one of nature's most powerful patient healers. It doesn't numb the pain like medicine. It doesn't shout, it whispers, steady, subtle, always there. So I began adding just a pinch to Grandpa's dinners. A spoon in his pumpkin soup. A swirl into his evening porridge. Sometimes just steeped quietly in tea. Weeks passed. No miracles, no drama. But slowly I noticed. His hands weren't as swollen in the mornings. The redness faded. And one day, as he rolled up his sleeves, he said gently, "I don't feel as stiff anymore when I wake up." Just that, no big moment. No grand scene, but I felt the shift. One root, one quiet habit, one healing that began from within. Spinach, kale, bok choy, they weren't exactly Grandpa's favorite. Why's it always the bitter stuff? He'd mutter, pushing the greens to the side of his plate. But I didn't give up. I started gently, steamed with garlic until soft, stirred into hot soups, blended into warm porridge where the flavor melted into comfort. What he didn't know was that these leafy greens were quiet warriors. Rich in antioxidants, calcium, and vitamin K, they helped calm inflammation. They stood guard over bones that had carried decades of life. And slowly, something shifted. Grandpa stopped complaining. He stopped avoiding the greens. One evening, he even looked up and said, "You didn't make enough." So I served him a second bowl. And as I watched him eat, no fuss, no resistance, I smiled to myself, because I knew. His joints, those tired knees and stiff fingers, were silently grateful for every bite. One morning, I decided to surprise Grandpa. I stirred a handful of fresh blueberries into his warm bowl of oatmeal. He looked at it, eyes widening a little, and grinned. Dessert for breakfast. He chuckled but took a bite. What he didn't know, what he didn't need to know, was that those berries, the blueberries, the strawberries, the raspberries I quietly began slipping into his breakfast and afternoon snacks, were packed with anthocyanins, powerful antioxidants that fight inflammation and protect the cartilage that holds our joints together. I didn't tell him about the science. I just watched as he started moving his fingers more freely, as he reached for his teacup without hesitation, One day, while stretching his hands out toward the sun on our porch, he said casually, "My hands feel looser lately, not so stiff." And I smiled, because that change, it didn't come from a pill, it came from a bowl of berries, from a sweet, simple gift straight from nature, and quietly offered by someone who loved him. The last change I made was small, so small Grandpa didn't even notice at first. I switched our regular cooking oil with extra virgin olive oil, not for frying, just for finishing. A gentle drizzle over his evening soup, a spoon stirred into warm porridge, a light toss on steamed vegetables. That golden oil held something special, olecanthal, a natural compound with anti-inflammatory power. Gentle but real. Some studies even say it works like ibuprofen, but without the side effects. I didn't mention any of that to Grandpa. I just added it quietly every day. And then one afternoon, after waking from his nap, he stretched, looked up at me and said, "You know, I don't feel so stiff anymore." Just like that, and I smiled, because that one spoonful a day, that barely noticeable act, had brought him something priceless: ease, softness, and just enough strength to keep moving through his day with grace. You don't have to change your whole kitchen. You don't need to study every nutrition rule or perfect a long list of foods. You just need to begin with one small act, one soup, one plate, one quiet choice that gently says, "I see you, I care." Maybe it's a bowl of turmeric porridge on a rainy evening. Maybe it's adding a handful of greens to dinner. Maybe it's just replacing one spoonful of oil with something kinder. That one act, simple as it seems, can start to make a difference. Relief can return, steps grow lighter, and life, once stiff and slow, can start to soften again, bit by bit, with love at the heart of it all. If you're caring for someone older, a grandparent, a parent, or someone you love, I just want to tell you this: what you're doing matters, even if it feels exhausting, even if no one sees the effort. Your loved one feels it. Every bowl of soup you serve, every vegetable you steam just right, every quiet moment when you ask, "Does your back still hurt today?" That is love. Never think your care is small, because for someone whose strength is fading, your presence is everything. If this video brought you even a little warmth or comfort, please share it. Someone out there might need to hear this too. You're not alone. And what you're doing truly is beautiful.